Hi guys, it's Kelly here, and I am back with another video. Today I'm using the same Fun in the Rain set that I used for another video that I did. This set is by Hero Arts, and it was just it was so cute. All these little animals, they're playing in the puddles, and they have galoshes on, and I just couldn't resist trying to do a little bit of a rainy day background. So the first time that I had used them, I did a card where it was like after the storm was over, and here I really wanted to try to recreate a rainy day look. So I'm stamping down all of my images in Simon Says Stamp and Simon Says Stamp Intense Black. And the reason I'm using that is because I'm going to do Copic Coloring, but then it's also waterproof. So I'm just masking their little feet because I want to stamp a puddle. This puddle is included in the set. And then just to kind of create the scene across the card, I'm going to flip that puddle around and I'm going to stamp it a couple of more times just so it doesn't look like the same exact puddle each and every time. And then I'm letting them also hang off the side of the card. So here I'm going to be doing my watercoloring with some distress inks. I'm using Salty Ocean and Blueprint Sketch. Blueprint Sketch is more of a like a blue-violet base, which is really, really pretty. I didn't want to take the time to paint down liquid biscuit to mask my images. So what I'm doing instead is I'm using a small brush to lay down a line of clean water around my images. When you watercolor, the pigment only goes where an image is wet. So by putting down that clean water, it creates a barrier so that the pigment's only going to butt up against where you stopped putting the water. So then once I had everything outlined, I'm going to go in with a bigger brush because I want this whole background to, well, not the whole thing. I think I went about 3/4 of the way up. And then I'm just making sure that the edges that are around my animals stay wet. So you'll see me every once in a while go back in real close and just kind of dot in some water. And then I didn't worry about the puddles because I'm going to be Copic coloring over them anyway. And again, I actually have bought now painter's tape to paint my pieces down, but when I was doing this, I still did not have any, so I'm just holding it with my hand. I'm going to go ahead and use that large brush to pick up some Salty Ocean and drop that in the bottom. And then when I take it to the top, I'm going to turn my brush so that it's not flat down. I'm using the thin part of the brushes, and I'm just going to kind of make like streaks, like lines, because I wanted the color to come down like it was rain. And you know, even though obviously rain is clear, water is clear, you can still see it kind of sheeting down, and that's the look that I was going for. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the Blueprint Sketch. I'm going to put some in the bottom because that's going to be a little bit darker, and then I'm going to kind of streak it through the rest of the colors. And like, even though I'm dotting it in, like I'm just tapping my brush in or I'm streaking it in, and they look really abrasive, like they look really harsh, it's not going to stay like that. So as they, you know, spread with the water, as you add more pigment, here I'm adding dots. Again, it's not going to stay dots. But then also you have to remember that watercolors dry back a lot. So it's not going to look, the intensity won't be the same. So I'm just going to kind of mess around with the back until I'm happy with how the streaks look and I'm happy with how much color I have down. Because I didn't tape down my paper, I have some water pooling at the bottom. Didn't want too much water at the bottom, but I did want enough pigment so that it didn't look white. So I'm just going to keep playing around with that bottom part, adding in colors until I'm happy with it. One thing I do want to mention with water that pools, it's totally fine, but just understand when you go to heat dry that you're going to have harder edges where it pools, because it will dry around the pool before the pool will dry. So you can see like on the right and left hand, and then a little bit on the bottom, I have those pools with the harder edges. I don't mind that, but if you do, soak up those pools before you heat dry it. The one thing that I love about watercolors is really forgiving. So if you get some color where you don't want it, you can go back in with clean, clear water. And then that's what I was doing. You just put the water on there and blot it up and it'll pull up the pigment as well. I literally do not know how to make a watercolor background without doing some sort of water splatters in the background. I don't know. I just can't do it. Like, it looks so plain if I just leave it. Plus I was trying to get some texture in the background. When I was doing my masking, I realized that I forgot to stamp down the puddle ripples. They have like water ripples. So now I'm masking the feet of my biggest duck so that I can stamp those down. And then I'm also going to add them just a little bit to the ones on the sides. For this one on the left-hand side, it didn't fit. It didn't make any sense with that littlest one. So I just wiped it off. And then tapped it with my finger to make sure it was dry, and then used the larger ripples because that fit the shape of the puddle better. And now we're going to move into the Copic Coloring. On screen, this looks really blue-green for some reason, but I did use Salty Ocean, so I promise you it is blue. It is blue-blue, it is not blue-green. So here I'm starting with my lightest color, and I'm just filling in those puddles. I kind of toyed around with how I wanted to color it. I knew I wanted to accent those ripples with a little bit of color, and then also where the ducks were walking and kind of like the back edge of the puddle, just so it would have some depth and it wouldn't look flat. And so I'm just going to do that, adding just little bits of color here and there. There isn't really like a right or a wrong way to do this. As long as you've got some color around your edges and some color in those ripples so they don't look flat, you're doing all right. Like, this isn't an exact science. They're water puddles. Don't stress too much about that. I felt like, you know, I'm a big fan of contrast, and even though I didn't add a ton of the B04, which is, I mean, it's probably like a mid-tone, but comparative to the colors we got going on this card, it's relatively dark. I didn't add a lot of it, but I felt like the little bit that I did add made a big difference. So keep that in mind when you're coloring, that just a little bit of dark can make a really big difference. I wanted the scene to have a little bit more flow, so I decided to go in with the B00 and just draw some more of those little itty bitty bits and splashes. And then I'm just kind of adding all of my shading to the left hand side. That's something that just comes naturally to me in my high school art class when I was taught to color with a light source. It was always in the top right hand corner. It's just something that I've carried. But again, there isn't a right or a wrong way to do this. It's just kind of how I roll. So once I have those kind of down, I'm going to go out from lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest. If you've watched my videos, you know that's what I normally do. And then the water's done, and we're going to move on to the ducks. I don't know what it is about little chicks, little chicky ducks. They're always yellow in my head. I don't know if they're always yellow in real life. I didn't do any research on it or anything, but in my head, they're always yellow. Fortunately for me, yellow it's not, orange is blue's complementary color, but yellow is a close second, and those colors just look really nice together. So I didn't really have any issue making my little ducks yellow. Yellows are kind of hard to get good contrast with. So I used the same setup for my B's that I did for my yellows. So I used a B quadruple 0, a B00. I did the same thing with my yellows, but for my contrast color with the yellows, I had to go all the way down to a Y26. And I had to do that because the Y02 and the Y04 are basically the same color. Like, I'm not exaggerating. They're pretty much exactly the same. So now we're going to move on to the larger duck. He or she, I don't know, I feel like it's a mama duck. I don't know why. I just do feel like it's a mama. But they have wings. The wings that are kind of hanging over. Not that the little ones don't have wings. They clearly do. That would be weird. But this one is just, you can get a little bit more detailed. So I tried to add some shading underneath the wings, where they would obviously lay over the body, but then I also tried to add just a little bit between them. That requires like a really light hand. The tip of your marker should barely be touching the paper. You should barely be able to feel it. And we're not going to add a ton because we want her to be a relatively light duck, just kind of like her babies are. So again, it was just really, it was a lot of shading, but you can't even tell because they're yellows. That's just how yellows roll. I picked 2 oranges to do their beaks and their feet. I gotta be honest, I probably could have got away with 1 orange because the shading was almost like nil. Then I decided to do her galoshes green. I don't know, I did red the last time and I loved them. And I just thought green would be something different, and this particular combination of yellow greens is super bright and fun, and so I just thought that they would be cute. The way that I colored them was really more of a center highlight, so like if the light was hitting them directly, but I wasn't really paying too much attention to light source in this card because it would just be kind of a cloudy day, so you wouldn't have a particular light source. So again, lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest, just making sure everything's kind of blended really good, which is pretty easy in small areas, and then just going over the whole thing with my lightest YG marker. I wanted to like kind of give them something to stand on. So I'm adding some shadows underneath where they're standing. When you stamp images, if they don't have something to quote unquote ground them, they look just kind of like they're floating, and it's a little bizarre. So especially if you're doing a scene, they should have a shadow, a ground, something underneath them so that they don't just like they're floating in midair. Same thing goes for if you're doing, even if you're not doing a scene, if you just like stamp some cute little critters and then you want to do like a circle focal point, like there should be something that anchors it. So here is the fun part. So this is just white acrylic paint, and I'm going to add some water to it to just make it a little bit more transparent. I didn't want it to be full strength. And I'm using a it's a round brush, size 2 round brush, I think. A number 2. That's right, a number 2. And I wanted the rain to look like it was kind of beating up on the ducks. So I am tapping it on their heads and their backs, like where the rain would hit. And it's really subtle and it's hard to see on camera. It's so much easier to see in real life. But then I'm also streaking it through my background. And the important part of this, and I know that it's hard, especially when you've spent time coloring it because you get nervous, but the reason I had to color it first is because in order for this to look realistic, like the raindrops are hitting the ground, like the raindrops are falling from the sky, you have to be willing to go over what you've colored a little bit. I'm not saying get crazy, don't do one huge raindrop through his head or anything, but you have to be willing to go over what is colored because then it looks like there's rain in the background and rain in the foreground. So I'm going back with my white gel pen and just reinforcing the white around their head and their backs because it's a different opacity, so it will be more realistic looking, that it would be denser, like where it's actually closer to their heads. And then I always like to outline my image. You watch my videos, you know this. So I went back through and outlined those. For the raindrops that I added, I only added an outline to the left-hand side. Stamped my sentiment down, which is actually the same sentiment that I used the last time because I just liked it so much. And I think everybody can use encouragement cards. We all got stuff going on. So these are the clear droplets from Pretty Pink Posh, which I'm pretty much obsessed with at this point. So I just added a couple of those, and then nothing is complete without some sparkle. So I'm going to go in with some clear Wink of Stella and hit those water puddles, and then do the same thing that I did with the raindrops. I'm just going to kind of streak it through so that it's nice and shimmery. And then that is the whole card. So I hope you guys learned a little bit of something. I hope maybe that you'll try it, especially with spring right around the corner. God willing, everybody cross your fingers, say a little prayer, you know, so we can get some flowers and warmth. But anyway, so that'll just be something that maybe you could try in the future. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye.